It's been an incredible week here at CES. Always amazing to see all the new innovations coming out of the tech world. And here at the Mediaocean Retreat, it's been a great opportunity to get together with customers, partners, everyone in the advertising and media marketing industry, talking about what's in store for the year ahead and how we can collaborate towards a more integrated and connected future.
What am I excited about at CES this year? Well, it's the place where we're talking about the future. So often in advertising, we don't look far enough ahead to cool things like AI and robotics and VR and AR and the metaverse. And everyone is energized and excited to talk about those things here. That's the best thing.
Yeah, here at CES, really excited to see all the auto manufacturers come out and really showcase their top technology, what's coming out in the future. Electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles, the interior tech, how they're really making the interiors of the vehicles become well suited to all the needs of their consumers. Focused around luxury, focused around experience. The new version of what a car ride can actually give consumers is going to be, I think, one of the top things we're going to see at CES today.
The two big things that we've seen this week are Roku rolled out their own television and their own branded TV, and so did Xumo. And that talks a lot about how the TV operating system is really the next battleground in the streaming wars. It's because whoever owns the operating system on the TV gets to control what content goes on the TV, what order it's in, how easy it is to find it, all sorts of data around that. So that's really something that we're keeping an eye on and we're seeing news about at CES.
The key themes and conversations that we're having right now are largely centered around transformation. This includes transformation in terms of finding better ways to do things, more efficient ways to do things. It's all about convergence and how teams are being restructured, organizations are changing. It's also about new roles. We're seeing a lot of transformation type roles emerging across all of our customers and partners because everybody is looking to do more with better resource.
I'm really excited to be here at CES this year. You know, it's been a couple of years since we've had an event, and a lot has changed in those 2 years. Obviously, over the course of the pandemic, streaming has not just exploded, but become perhaps the most important disruptive trend in the advertising business. So that's going to be a lot of our focus here over the next couple of days. I'm excited to meet all of our partners and customers, and I'm really excited about the agenda that we have with CIMM here to really get at the underlying forces that are shaping the future of television, and frankly, teasing some special announcements of ours as well.
So CIMM was founded originally in the 2000s by the major TV networks to look at opportunities to innovate and enhance measurement, particularly through the use of data. And that is still very core to what we do. But we've worked very hard over the last 6 months to expand our mission. And we now look at a broader range of issues. We're looking at content, we're looking at measurement of advertising, we're looking at currency developments. We're also rolling out new work streams in programmatic, CTV and streaming, and also starting to do work looking at the TV data ecosystem, at things like identity resolution, data quality, about which more later, and so on. We've expanded our program very dramatically with new events. I'm particularly fond of our international collaborations. We have a big new international collaboration with the WFA, EGTA, and so on, the International Knowledge Exchange, which will be expanding this year. We're also very keen on collaboration generally with the US trade bodies. Many of our projects, such as the multi-currency project, which has just been published or is about to be published, our ID resolution project, our new measurement guide, are intensely collaborative. We bring in people from across the industry. And I'd love at this point to introduce our new Deputy MD, Tamika Key, who lots of you will know, who is now going to be helping to helm CIMM, and even more importantly, is going to be moderating and emceeing today. So, Tamika, welcome to CIMM.
Good afternoon, everyone. So my first job in our industry was actually in the research division of a media agency. Some of you people might know, if you're old school, it's called Media CIA. And so I think almost 20 years later, it's fitting that I now have a role with an organization that is focused on research to help make our industry better. I've always been curious about how things work under the hood, whether it was search and SEO and SEM, whether it was social, or whether it was this new thing at the time called RTB. And over the course of my career, I've been able to look under the hood of a lot of different ad tech platforms, from Rubicon Project and Magnite, to Lotame, to Ad Colony, to the list goes on and on and on. And so I'm really excited to be able to bring some of that programmatic expertise and the curiosity about looking under the hood to CIMM. We're here at CES where we're gonna see robots. I hope I see robots, but we're gonna see robots. We're gonna see all of these things about the future and the future of consumers and electronics and innovation. And I think sometimes advertising, sometimes what we do gets written off. Like, I don't know about you, but I've said things in the past like, it's not rocket science, or we're not saving lives. But advertising is one of the most impactful and powerful forces in the world. We influence people to spend money, but we also influence them to think. We influence them to dream. And so I'm really excited to be able to work with an organization that is going to measure the effectiveness of our campaigns and our content. And hopefully, John, we'll move into areas like audio and VR and AR and gaming.
I personally come to Mediaocean from their acquisition of Flash Talking last year. And then the year before that, Mediaocean acquired 4C, which brought with it a very substantial machine learning and AI capability for TV planning that we're beginning to infuse into that converged Prisma workflow. So bringing new intelligence and automation into the system that the planners and the buyers used to do their work every day. So system of record connecting advertising workflow to financials, streamlined buying across all channels, infused with intelligence. So while we've definitely not solved all of the problems that everybody has yet, we are well on our way. In fact, we're far enough along now that we want to begin to preview our new Mediaocean TV IQ system. So TV IQ is that intelligence layer infused into the consolidated workflow across Prisma Omni. So that brings audience-based forecasting and optimization against plan goals, and the ability to define those strategic audiences right in the system, bring your own data, bring external data to bear, define those audiences, forecast against them, build your plans, and have the plans automatically optimized.
Most of us here, and I'll tell you very honestly, I'm looking for 3 to 5% annual performance efficiency improvement. It's not a lot, but it's a lot, right? And so as we build this stuff, that's my goal. And if increased match rates gets me there, then great, right? And if identity resolution, if increased relevancy, if delivering better creative to the right audiences gets me there. But I think sometimes, and again, me not being the technophile on this panel, sometimes we get so wrapped up in showcasing what the technology does, we lose sight of the actual goal is incremental performance improvement to the bottom line, or the top line, depending on how you want to view it.
Depending on what year it is. Yeah. Mike, what do you think? Because your job is at least to do some of the vetting so that Ben can focus on that. You've got to vet some of these things so that he can just focus on that growth. You have to at least help choose which partners matter that are going to make that possible.
I think there's in most of the technology setup that we do, there's human labor hours and cost that we have to figure out how to absorb. The technology is definitely getting more automated. There's definitely a lot more AI. Everyone loves talking about AI, but in reality, what's happening is there's bots that are running a lot of these processes. The more that systems, I mean, like Mediaocean is getting a lot faster, better QA processes in the back end. There's a lot more sort of simplicity, less button pushes. The more we can eliminate that to get these tools set up and configured together, I think the simpler it's going to be for everyone, because the last thing we want to do is spend 6 months setting up a platform, spending $10,000 in a campaign, and then we find out it doesn't work.
Yeah. So it's almost like another UN mission, which...
Or superheroes.
Yeah, listen.
It's the Avengers.
The Avengers, right? And good, I love it.
We've made huge progress in the last few years, but there's clearly still work to be done. What would you like to see us turning our attention to in the year ahead?
Well, I think, workflow is obviously always out there in general, and I would just, I know Mediaocean is helping put on this event. We just need the help from these third-party platforms and partners to help us move just as fast as we're all ready to move, and quite honestly, push us, right? Let us not be the ones pushing, help push us and work collaboratively together. I think at the end of the day, what we have to really ensure we don't make a bad habit of is trying to take the good of what all the new innovation brings and trying to shove it into the containers of the past. We will fail on the innovative, basically greatness that we can achieve for our clients if all we try to do is then replicate it into the old.
It's not really a technical issue. It's a business development issue, realistically. But also, what are we looking to do, right? It's not always easy to track down to a attributable value when you're doing at a household, right? So there's some complexities both around understanding how to leverage the measurement effectively, how to do it effectively across a multitude of partners, then how to bring that back into your process so that you can go back out into the marketplace and continue to have an engaging communication with your consumer, right? Because that's what this is about. And the other challenge that I think that we have is really on the creative side, because I think a lot of times you're using general market creative to run in addressable environments. Targeted, great, but the messaging isn't necessarily there to do that. And so how do you then delineate between what you're doing in the general market and what you're doing in addressable, and so on? So there just has to be more thoughtfulness about how that's coming together.
With human behaviors being so dynamic, you can start to see how we had to change our infrastructure, we had to innovate and make these shifts as these behaviors started to change and shift. And we saw this with CTV and mobile, where these devices started to become these home entertainment studios, and it changed the world in terms of how they started to watch longer form content. And I would say, even with that, it changed the way that younger generation watched this content as well. I believe it's 7 out of 10 Gen Zers watch video content on their smartphone devices. And if you were to think 15 years ago, no one would have expected you could watch a movie or a TV series on your mobile device. But because we had mobile as our foundation, we were able to capture this behavioral shift. And if you were to think about the term mobile itself, it really implies change and movement. So we had this natural affinity to capture this data, analyze it, understand it, and activate it. So now, 7 years later, we find ourselves with a ton of data, and we are mixing and matching this data and further expanding our understanding and discovery of people based on what they're watching versus what they're not watching, what they're buying versus what they're not buying, and this all stemmed from measuring advertising.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how all of the people, how everybody deals with the cloud-based companies. So Snowflake, AWS, Google, Microsoft with Azure, and how those develop, and then really, how I think clean tech actually becomes commoditized. Because I think it will become, we're already kind of once you have, people like Snowflake and AWS start to enter into the space, then you start to see commoditization happening very quickly. So I think it will be very interesting to see how that dictates how people become, whether people become interoperable or not. I kind of see this almost like, tag management back in the day. There were so many tag manager companies, then all of a sudden, Google came out with their tag management solution and all of them were gone. They all had to pivot and do something else. And I think that, one of the reasons those companies have entered into the space is they do not want their customers' data leaving their environment. Snowflake doesn't want you to take your data and put it out into somebody else's, infrastructure and have your data live there. They all want it to live in one place. And they're going to do everything they can from a tech perspective to make sure that that doesn't happen. You know, you've got the native app for identity that Snowflake is in the process of beta testing that's going to come out next year. And you know, AWS is investing in the same thing, so you're going to see all of that really kind of changing the landscape.
So what I've kind of worked out is that the point at which digital measurement started to fail us is when we stopped measuring outward and we started measuring inward. So have a think about that. And there was the conversation about panels was brought up in a couple of sessions ago. We stopped measuring humans and we started measuring impression data that makes assumptions about human behavior. And it's a very different thing. And this is what I'm going to talk about. So for just stepping back in terms of background, I've been working with attention data and collecting attention data from 16 countries across the last 5 years and looking at its relationship between impression data and human behavior. So I can clearly say I've seen that this is the point at when everything changed. So let's just finish on one simple word. The power of attention management cannot be, quite simply cannot be measured without humans. Simple as that. So the important thing is, as we move towards attention as being an advanced currency, we need to bridge clarity and scale so that we can positively change this landscape. So human-informed attention data is vital for the future of this ecosystem.
We've all seen the term panel be used in some creative ways over the years as well. But the reality is they have an established definition. To keep it easy, I think we can all agree that in the simplest form, a panel is a group of individuals purposefully chosen to reflect a larger group of people. That smaller group of individuals is studied to understand the greater whole. Panels are fully consented environments where individuals willingly allow their behaviors to be monitored in a clear value exchange. They know exactly what information is being collected and how. And so, the future of measurement has to be complete, passive, and flexible. The measurement structures that support the information economy need to evolve in stride with the changing rate of culture. Doing so requires a complete understanding of how consumers behave, composed of a complete panel structure and technical infrastructure. It requires a passive approach to measurement that requires fit for purpose by eliminating friction for panelists and dependencies on outdated technologies. And it requires the flexibility that starts and ends with the consumer, weaving data collection in everyday life. Just because measurement technology is built today doesn't mean it shouldn't be able to adapt with the changing behaviors to measure tomorrow.
Right now, and what has been happening, I think 2014 or 13, 10 years ago, we had the Arbitron, CIMM approved the Arbitron application for the, I think it was ComScore data to make this project blueprint. So for 10 years, we're trying to get everything to work together, and then Arbitron not in the market anymore and can't be used for that purpose. I think the real question is, can panels be made so that they're syndicated and accessible for the combination and modeling of other data sets? And so that's really something that hasn't been addressed.
And this is the notion that's been circulating, obviously, of the A&M, the VAB, creating a panel that can be commonly used by different providers.
Yes.
Deirdre, do you want to comment?
I would have answered your question yes and no. I think there's an acknowledgement that panels play a vital role in a world where big data comes first. And at Nielsen, we have more big data than anybody out there, and that is where we start. And working with big data, you absolutely need a truth set. I think where I would say no is in many of these conversations, you facilitated some of the panels where this has come out, how people define that panel that can be used to work with that truth set. There's still a broad range of answers. I've heard folks in the industry say, well, we don't need a panel, we'll use big data to correct big data.
And I think that that's the biggest piece of this, is who's reaching into their pocket and actually supporting all of these multi-different currency opportunities that we're going to be tapping into. Because before, we were living in a world where it was one, and it was Nielsen, and everybody just said, okay, this is what we have to do, this is how we have to drive our business forward, and that no longer is the case. But who's going to go to Nielsen and tell Nielsen, we've got to pull millions of dollars from our contract to go and support these other currency deals? I mean, that's way above my pay grade, and I'm not going to be the one to do that, so somebody else is going to have to, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, I don't want to derail us, but this whole conversation scares me just a bit, so I want to be clear on what we think. Multi-currency world, yes. Multi-currency providers for the same metric scares me. I don't
Because of the payment reason?
The financial aspect of it, the planning aspect of it. I don't know how I can go to my planning groups and say, you need to plan on iSpot for one company, and you need to use VideoAmp for another, and put it together for a unified buy. So financially, planning, I don't see how that can happen. I still think we need the foundation of a measurement to put everybody on the same playing field. And whether people choose to use that or go to another provider for attention, and guarantee on that if a partner is willing to. Go to a different one for foot traffic or attribution and agree with that. But having different providers for the same metric, I don't see how we can execute that.
But I think from the seller perspective, that's something that we can't avoid, right? So, whereas you may select, a VideoAmp and somebody else selects an iSpot, it behooves for us to be able to do all of it, right? So, we often
Sure, if you guys pay for it, I'm all for it. Isn't that the agency way, right? You guys can pay for it.
Oh gosh.
Automation, big opportunity? Or actually quite hard to do?
It's hard to do, requires a lot of heavy lifting.
Right.
And there are a lot of legacy systems in the way. The advantage right now goes to programmatic digital, but I also would caution that ease of execution does not necessarily mean effectiveness, right? Just because you can do it easy. And an example of that is, for example, there's a very heavy reliance on IP address for matching, but those match rates are actually fairly poor. So yes, it's easy to execute, but are you really getting your money's worth, right? And so there is a balance between a comprehensive plan that has layers and are well thought out in terms of how things complement each other and how can I build incremental reach and things like that, versus just going for what's easy because it's already automated, i.e. digital programmatic, right? And so I think that that's an important balance. That said, automation is absolutely necessary to increase both the pace of execution and the ability to respond and essentially optimize over the course of a campaign.
I was going to say, I mean, things have just gotten infinitely harder as you think about the fragmentation, the different devices, the ways in which things are routed from an ad server perspective. And I think what's so fascinating, we actually were talking earlier with VideoAmp, and we believe strongly in a media mix because we have the luxury of living in a world where we can make a recommendation on the right kind of media mix that allows for you again, it's always going to go back to the funnel, right? And we can ultimately think about how do we get to our advertisers' objectives at the end of the day. And so, but it's not necessarily going to be easy. And we think about incrementality. We think about the fact that like you're going to start with TV right now because TV still has massive scale and you can reach a lot of people in a short window of time. That's what TV does very well. Now, then you need to start building and finding your actual audience segment. And now where are we going to find them? How do we make sure that we can target and deliver on them in a way that, again, is somewhat simplified? This is not easy right now. And I'm actually, one of the things that I think is going to be interesting is when we actually flip, because everything we talk about is like, how do you become incremental to TV? Like I used to work at Hulu a long time ago, and we'd be like, you need this much weight in TV in order for us to be incremental, okay? And guess what? We're gonna be much more efficient because this is how we operate, and we're gonna demonstrate efficacy on the back end. Oh, and by the way, it was only 2 ads per pod, so let's just talk about the fact that the viewer experience was great. Well, here, now we're gonna go into a world where we're actually gonna start having the same conversation where streaming is going to be foundational and TV is going to be incremental.
Right, everyone, we are sadly timed out. I hope we've given you. Did you want to find out?
No, I was going to say, it's time for the moisture drinks. What did you call it?
We'll just do drinks. Sorry about that.
Right.
Wet drinks are not a thing here. I mean, I don't know.
The moist alcohol bar is open.
Dry martinis. I did dry martini, dirty martini, but moist martini hasn't made it. No. A massive thank you to our panel and to all of our speakers today.
All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thank you again for joining us here at the Mediaocean Retreat. My name is Aaron Goldman. I am the head of marketing here at Mediaocean, and it's our pleasure to host you. It's been a great week for us, second day of content here. We did a great program yesterday. Shout out again to the folks at CIMM for organizing such compelling sessions. And we're going to try and outdo ourselves today with our program all around the theme of making an impact. We're going to sort of pick that apart from a few different angles, certainly in terms of the business and the results that we're all looking to drive and we're held accountable to for our companies. And you know, as we head into a period of further economic uncertainty, you know, we're all on the hook to show that from a media marketing standpoint, what we're doing is making an impact and driving results.
But social creative is a big opportunity. So when the team asked folks, what are the biggest opportunities to improve execution in social channels? This makes my little heart sing. Better creative and production tools is at the top of the list. Of course, everyone cares about ad performance, so that's not surprising as number 2. But better creative and production tools. It's very clear that the way that we produce creative today and the way that we've been doing it for decades is not up to the task of the sort of world of complexity, of multiple platforms, of fragmentation, of waning consumer attention or the fight for that consumer attention. We just absolutely have to do better from a creative standpoint, from a trust standpoint, from a privacy standpoint. What we say, how we say it to consumers is the front line. It's the most important thing. And we've just not done a good enough job, I think, in innovating in those spaces. That's something when I was at Forrester I wrote a ton about. And as a person who came from media, frankly, I understood very little about the world of creative and the creative process. So it was a very humbling and illuminating experience to have to go and learn about it and realize that a lot of us in the world of media totally undervalue the importance of creative. What's interesting to me about this one is the nuance that these guys asked about suitability alongside brand safety, and I think that's super, super fascinating. Because, you know, if we're living in a world where we have a battle for attention, where we live in a world where consumer expectations are higher than ever, where we live in a world where trust is something we absolutely have to earn every day with consumers, we cannot simply push things at them. Being in environments that resonate for a brand becomes that much more important. And so something like suitability feels like a maturation of the conversation. You know, it used to be, was it viewable? Okay. Then was it viewable and was it safe? Okay. But if it's viewable and safe and appropriate or relevant, you know, to Vice versus Pampers, that level of sophistication is, I think, where we're starting to go. And so I was very interested to see that. And anyway, suitability. 2023, the year of suitability. So how do we start thinking about the idea of optimizing consumer experience, because it's obviously super critical, without getting stuck in this trap that it has to mean 100% atomic data from the bottom up or 100% identity coverage? How do we graduate past the notion of what great needs to look like to something that actually gets us to an end goal that is sustainable with all of the things that we've talked about in mind? Because perfect is the enemy of good going forward. So how do we challenge some of those traditional notions?
Is that creative is the most important thing. It is more important than targeting. It's more important than reach. It's more important than context. This is data that comes from Nielsen. And we spend so much time in our worlds thinking about all of the elements of media and what we need to do to be successful when we're executing a campaign. But often creative ends up being a bit of an afterthought. And that's something that we need to correct, but it exists for a reason, and we know why it exists, right? It can be challenging, it can be cumbersome. We saw a bunch of data in Joanna's slides around, especially that social slide, where advertisers want better workflow. They want to do it more cost effectively, right? These are real challenges, and these are the reasons, you know, why creative is not pulled to the forefront in the way that we believe it should be. You know, one of the things that's always stuck with me when Sun Microsystems in the 90s came out with Java and the concept of, you know, write once, run anywhere, again, the challenge in creative is now this proliferation of platforms. You need different, whether it's in CTV or it's display or it's in one social platform versus another social platform. Every format is different. It has its own standards. It has its own sizes, right? So as a creative person, to think about how to not only build personalized creative, but just build creative that's going to work seamlessly across these platforms, that's really challenging. So the mantra that we've taken on here is this concept of create once and run everywhere. And so that when we talk about building tools and establishing tools to make it easy to do that, that is what we're focused on doing to make sure that we can bring personalization to the market. Every time we talk about this at a high level, we always get the question, well, what does it look like? How does it actually work inside the platform? So this is the quick kind of animation that shows inside the platform of how we're taking a bunch of assets that are inside the system across a whole bunch of basically different placements, and we're going to generate a bunch of unique creatives. So it's not someone that needs to go in and do this manually. It's just the assets are in there, the headlines are in there, the text is in there. All those elements that you specified that are going to be unique to the creative now live inside the platform, and then effectively it's the pushing of a button to generate what could be thousands, hundreds of thousands of different creatives. But yet we don't take away the manual pieces of it either. So we still give, and you can see here like a review process. We still give the advertiser, the agency, the ability to go in and say, okay, this one looks great, this one doesn't, thumbs up, thumbs down, comment on this one, they need to make a change, whatever the case is. So while we're automating workflow, and some advertisers are like, great, run it, others say, no, we want to actually be able to see everyone, and I think about pharma, for example, they need to review each one before it goes out. So different industries, different requirements. So again, if you want to automate it, you can automate it. If you want to automate it with some manual process behind it, that exists as well.
Our goal now, or at least my goal now, is to think omni-channel as the new channel of video, right? So we're no longer putting a strategy of video together that's exclusively for TV. We're telling stories ultimately. Attention is at the core of all the things that we're doing. So omni-channel can't just live in media, and it cannot live in media channels. So we've also put together a new unit called Transact that's heavily focused on commerce as a channel, retail media as a channel, and we now have people kind of sitting and standing on both sides of the aisle, right?
Well, that's what I was wondering. How do you, again, when you have individual experts, how are you guys thinking about collaboration or orchestration, or is there somebody that gets to say more of this, less of this?
Yeah, I think your question is actually answered best with a view on culture, which is not something you push top down. It's certainly not beer carts and yoga on Thursdays. It's something that you differentiate yourselves with, and for us, our culture is a two-sided coin. The first side is the more important one, and that's the culture of curiosity.
Yep. Okay.
The other side of the coin, though, is where your answer lives, and that is a culture of no surprises. So our people who have to stand on both sides of that line do so that there's not this, well, I'm a search channel buyer or I'm a retail channel buyer. You do your thing, I'll do mine.
Yeah.
It's what are you doing all day? How can I learn as much as I can about how what you're doing is impacting what I'm doing, and totally bringing a complete strategy to life end to end, whether it's a data point that powers an audience and an audience that powers an investment strategy or plan, approach, or a channel mix. If you're not activating that same thing, we just saw some great stuff on creative. If that creative is not coming to life against that exact same audience, that your signals are all wonky and messed up, and if you're not capable of talking internally on, yeah, it doesn't work.
Okay.
Originally, we were going to have a head who's our head of industry for the automotive vertical present. She's not able to be here, so I am standing in. Fear not, short form video is a passion area for me and something I've spent a lot of time doing and thinking about. If you're not familiar, I was part of the 4C acquisition by Mediaocean in 2020, and 4C was one of the original social ads platforms to run campaigns across, at the time, Facebook, Instagram, and then over time we added Twitter and Snap and Pinterest and LinkedIn, and now TikTok is our latest partner, and we're going to hear from some of those partners coming up on the next session. But to set the table for that, I want to take you through some thinking around best practices for short-form video as they begin to proliferate across channels. So looking at social, video now accounts for 50% of time spent and growing. You can see the trajectory here over the last few years and projected to 2024 from eMarketer data. And again, with the consumer hat on, it's about immersive experiences. It's about incorporating commerce. Joanna's talked about that as a continued growing trend. And of course, it's not just about ads and creative, but also about organic content and creators. So we'll talk some more about that as well. But first, just for like some level setting, what is social? Social, had a certain definition or category sort of built up around it. And back when I started at 4C back in 2015 is actually, I think, when this animation begins. And so as each consecutive year has gone by, the landscape has changed, and the where consumers are spending their time has changed. And the way that these platforms have built and organized themselves, and the way the content is surfaced in these platforms has changed. It's not all built around social connections and who you're friends with, but more and more it's algorithmic content recommended to you on a number of different criteria and factors. So when you think about where people are spending their time, it's not necessarily helpful to call, to paint all these with the social brush. In fact, and we'll hear from some folks on the next session, in particular TikTok, Snap, and Pinterest will probably all tell you they're not social networks. They don't want to be thought of as social platforms, whether it's entertainment, whether it's the camera company, as I loved when Snap filed their S1 with that positioning, or Pinterest for inspiration. Right? These aren't necessarily social plays, and to think about it that way does them a disservice.
For a lot of our platforms here represented on the stage, in terms of a user rejecting the content they see on the platform, I think all of us have enough return on ad spend and CPA numbers behind us in our back pocket that can communicate when a user or an audience says, you know what, this just doesn't resonate with me, right? And so the good news is across all of us, there are various types of consumer signal and intent that allow us to cater to, an arts and crafts and a retailer advertiser that can benefit a Hobby Lobby, for example, right? Or for us, we play a really strong role in the inspiration and the discovery stage of product discovery. And so we like to play into those strengths as we kind of figure out where we occupy a role in the consumer shopping journey.
Yeah. For Pinterest, we have so much intent. Over half of our pinners that come to the platform come with the express intent to shop and make shopping lists. So there's something really native and fluid there when brands help them guide that journey. It's not, it's authentic. It's not intrusive. We see 97% of searches on Pinterest are unbranded. So people come saying, I want a new winter wardrobe. I want a new recipe or cooking idea. I don't know what yet. I'm not brand loyal. Yep. So I think the authenticity for brands is that they're truly helping along that journey.
There's
Say
value.
Like, hey, come here. Like help narrow down all the overwhelming choices. Yeah. So I think that's how authenticity plays out with us. And I do think similar to both Snap and TikTok, Pinterest, we play full funnel. And I think that's not a cop-out answer. Everyone wants to be everyone to everything.
We're going to go into that one because we've talked a bunch about the sort of collapsing of the funnel earlier today. Right. And the,
what good looks like.
Discover to purchase in 5 seconds. And,
that's it. And it's the brands that do it all. I think to your question about, is it the same audience? Are you guiding them through the funnel? Yes, and we really see that.
Yeah.
We can shorten the funnel with the right messaging. Yeah. So we could go into lots of examples about that, but we've seen Kohl's do top of the funnel really well with shoppable, immersive experiences that are beautiful. It's just inspirational, very discovery oriented. Yeah. And we just announced yesterday with Albertsons that we're doing clean room technology, like all the way down, pulling them into the end of the funnel and showing that we work. So the best brands want to play everywhere and want to put that effort in, I think, with us to figure it out.
Creative fatigue sets in much earlier and faster for us. So, as
in the attention economy, attention is harder and shorter than ever.
Absolutely, and listen, we are short form mobile video.
Yeah.
That is our area of strength and unique, role that we play in the broader entertainment ecosystem. Now, the plus side of that is if you look at entertainment as maybe 10 years ago, a lean back experience, you're sitting home, 7 p.m. at the end of the day, watching something on the big screen in the living room. We actually represent a more leaned-in experience. This is the reason why we see really good throughput on the return on ad spend and purchase-driving conversion of the experience. But this idea of participatory entertainment, if you look at the creators on the platform or users on the platform, translates to around the most successful creators. They're posting 3, 4, 5 TikToks a day. And so you have to imagine for a brand to catch up to the same speed, right? That's one piece, just to maintain relevancy and stay on top of things. And then secondly, of course, anyone who's been in the performance game knows that there are certain optimization levers that you want to have. You want to be able to have the right capability to dynamically pair up the right creative with the right audience, so on and so forth. And so that adds to the creative fatigue and the creative burden. So it's a large reason why part of our vision and where we see this all going at TikTok is not just to appeal and partner and work with advertisers and marketers, but to actually look at the entire advertising community as a whole with the entire ecosystems, partnerships that we could be striking. And obviously we'd have Mediaocean in as one of our marketing API partners. There are others like Smartly and others who tap into our APIs to enable faster build out of creative, as well as our managed service partners in our TikTok Creator Marketplace program.
I'll take a step back because we've invested a lot of money here to make it democratize AR in general, to make it easy and accessible for everybody. So we have a Lens Web Builder tool that you can literally go create an AR experience in like 90 seconds. I mean, it is.
Wow. That's bananas.
It is. Obviously more clients are spending more time than 90 seconds, but it is something we are investing in. And we also have a creator marketplace where sort of influencers who create AR experiences, and a brand can reach out to one of them to create, and we can recommend, like, here are the ones I would go for, who, if you're really looking for somebody who's passionate about sports and creates great creative around sports. So we are doing a lot. And
You create an environment where they can connect directly in that way. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And then we also, I think Kohl's is a great example, and similar execution. What we try to do is create things that they can use evergreen. So for us, they created a closet, right?
Right.
And this is your spring closet, and you can shop from the lens right there, or the AR experience right there, and they can refresh that closet every single quarter, right? If it's back to school, if it's holiday, if it's summertime.
So the concept is evergreen. The kind of content
And the template of the creative is evergreen.
Is evergreen.
It's easy now.
Right. It's repeatable.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great.
I see a lot of performative things being done, check boxes, website updates with some metrics that look pretty. But what really are you seeing? Are companies really embracing this and trying to actually do something that makes a real difference and a real impact? Or is it pretty much just a checkbox and something performative?
I think it's a mix depending upon what the topic is that you're referencing. So even when we talk DE&I, we shouldn't be looking at that in a very narrow way that it's just about talent. It's the way you do business. It needs to come from the top and emanate throughout your organization. It needs to be about the way you're looking at your work products. It's the way you're working with external partners. It's the way you interact with your clients. It's everything. And so I think there are still people that look at it in a more narrow way, and that is an opportunity. When you talk about everything that a leader or a group of leaders has to deal with today, the world is far more complex than it used to be. I do think that's a positive for agencies helping to navigate that complexity, but it's a lot to take on.
I believe in agile at a core of how we are going to have to approach marketing in the future. And I mean, it happens in some places now, but if we're going to live the less is more type of approach, we have to change the way we work, the way it happens now, which I'm going to say, to be honest, you're going to, in being a client service business, adopt the working styles of your client because you tend to have to. In order for us to advance, in order for us to actually make use of technology in the proper way, we are going to have to change who we work. One of the call it a data nerd, but there's a little bit of a process nerd in me too. And, one of the biggest mistakes that any company can make, but I've seen it happen in agencies for sure, is that, you bring in technology to solve a problem. I mean, that's the definition of technology. It's a way of getting things done, all right? It's not software, it's whatever else. It's how you get things done, all right? But, we're in a bit of an egocentric business, I suppose. And so what do we do? What do many companies do is, they say, oh, I got this technology. I need you to customize this 64 different ways to the way we work because this won't work here or whatever else. It's a recipe for failure. What you actually need to be doing is changing the way you work to take advantage of what the technology can offer you.
So as a performance agency, right, like the best thing that everyone's like, we should make a performance scope where it's like, you make us $1 if that's really true, then, and it's like, yes, it's true. It's like, then we can get paid off of that. And I have not found a client yet, to be honest, that trust in, it's like, what is the single source of data that we're gonna use?
Yeah.
And we've had, and I've had very reputable, very intelligent, very strong data from their clients and us, and it's, the client is like, I'm nervous about doing it.
It's also, let me ask, the procurement people who don't have a past way of doing that, and so it's easier for them to have a look back versus a look forward, because we're working with the ANA right now on alternative compensation models and trying to outline some different ways of looking. The creative agencies have largely been able to move on from an FTE model and focus more on projects and scopes and outcomes. The media agencies have not been able to really move away from that as much because it's a little bit harder in terms of what is the output and what are you delivering. But I mean, your talent. Everyone has a different level of productivity, a different level of skill. Well, to say you're going to get X number of hours, I mean, you get also 10 hours from one person and 10 hours from other. It's
I think we need to do a follow-up panel on this. This sounds like
it's
a...
I think
no, this
the
is good.
FTE model also, it gives it an opportunity. It puts a glimmer of a gem in the client of losing trust in that relationship, because it's like they're paying for 10 people. So they're like, well, where's Sarah? I haven't seen her in a while. And it's like, it's not your job to do, it's like your job is to focus on the
But it makes you feel in control.
And then especially when they ask for timesheets, which is ridiculous.
Right, and then it's like, you can't build a relationship on that. Like, could you imagine if my husband came home and he's like, so how many meetings did you have today? Like, I would be like, excuse me, why are you asking me? You know what I mean? It's an odd.
I would just ask, do any other client service partners that they have the same kind of arrangement? Do you? Now, lawyers, yes, they're paid on an hourly, but
they're really expensive though.
Now, the interesting thing is most of the companies are actually in a position to do good. And doing good and being purpose-driven is not just sound bites that you give, or it is not for political correctness, or it is not for purpose washing. But actually it can make a true difference. So in fact, once I remember the conversation I was having with him, and I was sort of probing him and I was asking some questions. So I said, look, the point is when you're trying to be purpose-driven and all that, as an organization, will the shareholders, the investors, actually think it is even necessary or it is seen as a distraction?
Yeah, totally.
How do you tackle when you're looking at these investors? Now, his example was something which I quite liked. He said, look, you're sitting here on a dining table with lots of fantastic dishes and all that food. And in front of you just then, a poor, hungry, lean kid is walking by with barely enough clothing. Do you want to continue gorging your food, ignoring that guy, or would you want to do something for him? Now, when that is there, it sort of very dramatically brings it to the fore. So the point is we need to be really purpose-driven. And in fact, that's what, he and I, we worked together at Citibank in the past.
Yep.
He was my boss there, and that's why when he asked me to come and join MasterCard 10 years back, I came and joined MasterCard. And we worked in similar initiatives there, but to a different scale. And here, because he was the CEO, we could do it company-wide, and that has got fantastic momentum for us. And so we are living that reality. And one of the good things out of this whole purpose-drivenness is it enhances and elevates the employee satisfaction to a different level. Suppose the restaurant category is growing, say, at 7%.
Yep.
When we run this campaign, it starts growing at about 14%.
Okay.
But after the campaign is over, after the promotion is over, we still settle down at a number far higher than 7%. So we're maybe at 10% or 9%. So we have been a net positive gain we had in that category where we had run. So then we started rotating the categories based on where we want MasterCard share gain to happen.
Sure.
And if you actually look at the cost or the incremental profits of those, gains, share gains that we had in those categories, they more than pay for the money that we are paying Stand Up to Cancer. So what happens is it becomes a self-sustaining business model.
Do well by doing good.
Exactly. So this is a wonderful example, and then we started doing with the World Food Program. Now we are doing with something called Priceless Planet, of planting trees, and 100 million trees.
I was going to ask you about sustainability.
100 million trees we're going to plant by 2025. So this is how we are going about it.
Yeah.
So that way it becomes a part of your regular business as opposed to an ad hoc on this side contribution of some money for some cause.
So listen, you know me, I've been writing about this stuff for a long time. I have a strong point of view on kind of how the market has been developing. We live in this world now of sort of some necessary protection of data, some business-driven siloing of environments that makes what brands want to do, I think, more challenging. So how do you think about and you have big players that offer sort of end-to-end solutions. How do you think about Mediaocean as a neutral, do you think of yourselves as a neutral third party?
Yeah, so I think our greatest value proposition is our independence and our neutrality.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can't be the prosecution, the defense, and the jury, even though Google, Facebook, and Amazon all try.
Yeah.
The other interesting part is regulation. Right? So GDPR was there to protect consumers, but from a B2B perspective, what it actually did was make Google, Facebook, and Amazon stronger, and they increased market share.
Yeah, I know.
Through GDPR.
That's the frustrating thing. I mean, the frustrating thing is they are massive first-party data owners.
Yep.
They can do, and content owners, so they can do a lot in their own environments
Yep.
that make them benefit
Yep.
from these changes, and it makes me very nervous for small publishers, like very nervous, and for brands who are sort of increasingly reliant on those platforms to reach people.
Well, it's either listen, they're always going to be a huge part of the mix, but everyone else to compete with Google, Facebook, and Amazon as publishers need to compile a supply chain that costs them zero when they buy on Google, Facebook, and Amazon, and costs roughly half of their media budget when they're not, right? Which means those other inventory sources and publishers need to perform at 2x to be at parity.
Yeah.
And how can it be 2x when they also have the largest data set to inform and optimize, right? Yeah. So it's basically an unlevel playing field.
Yeah.
You need a big company to come in with a lot of scale, which is really our thesis, right? There's not a lot of companies who can do what we do at the price that we charge.
Yeah.
Right? We're pennies of CPMs. We're bips of percentages.
Yeah.
And
by the way, you're heavily entrenched. Like you have a customer base that is massive.
So what I also want to say is that all three of them are incredible partners to us.
I'm sure
right?
of course they are.
That's what this event was all about. The content, thought leadership, super important, but really just reinvigorating that sense of community that has been harder to do since we all went remote and since we had to pull out of CES at the last minute last year. So glad we're able to get it done. Thank you all for your support, and have a great rest of the show. There's still 2 more days. We're going to Sunday this year. So thanks again. Have a great one. Bye-bye.